Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
I don't know. We don't do guests too much with this. We have like a little game you have to play at the beginning. Little game.
Ooh, maybe I don't know, but let's find out.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Bell.
Oh, and I'm Drew Grant. Hi. Hi, everyone.
You know the game. That was it. That's all it is. And we just watched Oddity, starring Wood.
Could you open the door?
What do you want?
You're in trouble.
What?
Would you just open the door? I am telling you that there is someone in there with you.
Drew, thank you so much for being on. I'm so happy you're here for this.
I'm so happy to be here. This was my, the director who made Oddity, Damien McCarthy, is one of my favorite directors. And when I saw this movie's preview In a Violent Nature, when it came on the trailer, it said, from the director of Caveat. And I started screaming so loud.
Yep.
And then it showed you the bunny that was in Caveat. And I was like, yes! Yeah. And Lon was next to me. He was very embarrassed. He was like, what are you doing? And I was like, it's like an Oddity Caveat cinematic universe. I got so unnecessarily pumped for this because no one else knows what it is.
I had the exact same experience. I was seeing this before In a Violent Nature, or I saw this trailer, and I was like, this looks good. And then the moment it said director of Caveat, which it was one of those movies that I always sing the praises of, because this director is so good at, I don't know, just like classic, almost jump scare stuff. Before we get into it, though, I do want to give you a moment here. I thanked you for being on, but I want people to know where they can find you other than this podcast.
Oh, right. Thank you so much for that. You can find me over at Passion Fruit. That's passionfru.it. We're also on social media everywhere, but sometimes it's like Passion Fruit 4, like the number 4, and then us, or Passion Fruit 4 creators. We have a Discord. We have a Patreon. We're basically a creator labor organization. Like, we're trying to teach creators how to be small businesses and how to act professional and how to, demand the sort of, equity that other businesses have, because it's a $500 million industry and we are getting very, very little of it.
Yes. It's extremely important what you're doing.
Thank you.
So everybody should check that out, especially if you make things on the internet. I'm so sad I didn't get to see this movie with you, because but we are. I guess we'll say this now, unless I think you're still game to see Cuckoo next week.
Oh, hell yeah. This has been the summer of horror. I was just sad I could do Long Legs. Oh my God, because I've seen that so many times.
Oh my God.
And I must have played your episode like 3 or 4 times for different people, because I'm like, they get it.
Oh, I've seen Long Legs twice now, and I've loved it both times. But so yeah, how did you like Oddity?
I loved Oddity. I think Oddity is for people who felt disappointed in Long Legs, and I'll unpack that in a second. But
okay,
do you understand what I mean? Like, there's a big contingent of people online who felt, because of Long Legs' ARG elements that they did before the movie came out, like, there was all ciphers and cryptograms, and you could unlock this site, thebirthdayMurders.net, I think, that was written by Long Legs, and there were hidden parts of it and all this stuff. So people got really into the lore, the expanded lore that Oz Perkins had created for this movie. Right. And so the movie, when they saw it, felt like a letdown, or kind of felt incomplete, or felt like it was falsely advertising a certain kind of expansive world building. And I think Oddity is the opposite of that. What I said about Caveat remains true for Oddity, which is that it is the most concise, efficient film you can have. It's the most efficient kind of horror making. It's like one location, basically. It like Caveat
Yes.
especially was like one location. It's very minimal, like in terms of actual like CGI or like special effects. But what it does use, it uses so sparingly and so effectively that like Caveat kept me up for like weeks. Like I was afraid that mom was standing at the end of every hallway, like peeking over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like Japanese horror. Like it's just the jump scares are really effective, but they're not done too much.
I'm glad you brought up the J horror stuff. Yeah, this is also unlike Longlegs in the sense that, unlike Longlegs, it had barely any marketing, and that really bothers me. Like, I think we're in LA. I don't think this is in theaters anymore. Like, it was. I had to see it early this week because there was like no showings later at the AMC, which bums me out. Like, I hope people listening to this have a chance to watch it. It'll be on streaming soon. This just feels like to me one of those movies that like barely any theatrical release. They should have. I wish they had pushed it more, because bringing it back to J horror, my big thing about Damien McCarthy is that, like, nothing against James Wan and the Conjuring movies, but I think he does that pop horror jump scare stuff in such a fresh way that I'm like, why aren't, like, if you like the Conjuring movies, you should see Oddity. You should, like, if you like J-horror, because I think J-horror does that too. J-horror is very jump scary, but in a way where you're like, I have never seen that before.
Right. Yeah. Skinamarink. It's got that Skinamarink vibe to it. And I will say that, like, I'm not sure if Caveat ever got an official, let me unpack it a little bit. Like, I think Caveat never got an official release here. It was only distributed through Shudder, and like no one saw it because they didn't even market via Shudder. I don't remember how I found out about it, but I watched it. Yeah.
I saw on like a list where it was like, oh, what's this movie? And I saw the bunny, and I was like, or maybe, I don't know.
It might have been on like it might have been on Shudder's like main site. Like I feel like it's like it showed up on Shudder's like weird app that they have.
I might have done it as more hype actually, but yeah, it's definitely one where I was like, oh, it's weird. This looks good. What is this?
Yeah, so like I think this director, I tweeted out about Caveat being super efficient horror film, and it got like really big, no big deal, not to flex, but like it got like the tweet went really far, and the editor in chief of Fangoria picked it up, and then like so I started talking to Damien McCarthy on Twitter. I won't call it X, but
say hi.
I will. Like, he's not on there anymore. I was gonna like get in touch for this podcast, but we started talking. He was taking David Lynch's masterclass, like that masterclass series. And he was like, yeah, we were really jamming out. Too bad the conversation is not saved if you leave X. So, like, I don't have a record of it. But, like, I remember him being, like, really, really interested and engaged with the aspects of this that were, like, more Lynchian. Like, with the idea that the film was made for, like, this micro budget. But he wasn't really trying to give definitive answers about what Caveat was or, like, the expanded lore behind it. But clearly there's some things that carry over. Specifically, the different but same universe bunny. It was not the same bunny.
I brought up Conjuring because this actually has a very common thread, which is like the Conjuring had this idea with the Warrens collect these cursed objects from the previous movies. That's the same deal here. Well, we'll explain the plot, although I think people should see it. Although I would argue, here's the thing. On the writing side, I would argue like there is a twist in this, a twist that I knew in the first 10 minutes of the damn movie.
Oh yeah, immediately.
But the thing about both of his films is they're not badly written. It's just that's not the selling point to me. It's the execution. So like even if you haven't seen it, I don't feel like I'm going to spoil the shock of seeing certain things in this movie. It's very weird, like Caveat. I think this one. I think a lot of people I saw complaining with Caveat, which is like, why would you ever chain yourself like that? Why would you ever agree to that?
Well, because he has no memory. It's the Caveat. In order, like, he gets him there. He gets him to this remote location. Have you guys covered Caveat before? We
haven't, and we shouldn't spoil it. But the Caveat is about a guy, who's gets hired to watch this
landlord's like.
Is it landlord's niece or something? And she's scared of guys, so like the Caveat is you have to be chained on a leash at all times. Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like I would never do that, I would never allow myself. But it's weird to say, like that's not really the point of the movie. The point of the movie is to be weird and kind of freaky. And I think this this is less like unbelievable in terms of like the starting premise, but it's just as fucking weird.
I would say, the caveat thing real quick is like, I think the caveat thing is that it's so, it adds so many elements we kind of already know through tropes. Like, it's like the guy doesn't have a memory. He's scared of the water, and he's brought, by this like mysterious guy who says he knows him to this like remote place across the lake. So already we know there's like a condition for which he can't get back, right? That's really tight. I think that's really tight screenwriting. Like, once he's at the house, there's nowhere for him to really go because he's scared of water. So the guy kind of has him, like that's the caveat. He says, just stay here. The girl herself is like, has some sort of epilepsy or some sort of condition where she freezes up every once in a while and can't move and can't see, and like seems to be kind of like a doll kind of figure. And I thought the twist was really effective because you get so into this weird world where he's tied up and, like what's happening? Is there something supernatural, or is it just like, is it just kind of like a spooky setup? That you kind of like don't see the twists as they kind of progress. And then you were like, oh yeah, this has a memento element. I forgot. Like, he doesn't know anything about what he's done or not done in the past. And that's all I'll say about that. But I thought this movie was a little bit more conventional. I agree with you. Yeah.
It's more like for broader audiences, I think, but it's still weird because of the surround. So the basic premise is that a woman's, and this is from the trailer offer, is a woman's alone at her new house, and I knock at the door, and there's this guy who does not seem on the level. He's very shady, and he says, there's a guy in there. I saw someone go in when you went out to your car. Someone is in the house with you. You need to get out. She doesn't trust him. And that's like the opening offer is him being, and she said, like, for a moment she does, and she reaches for the door, and then we cut away. We learn she was murdered. She was murdered that night that happened. And now, her ex-fiance or ex-husband is still living in the house with his new girlfriend a year later. Spoilers officially.
She's got a twin sister.
Yeah. Oh no, she has a twin sister as well. Her twin sister is still alive, and she's a weird psychic. She can touch.
Psychic. Yeah, she's blind. I think she's blind, right?
She's blind. She's a blind psychic who touches objects and knows things. And she basically comes to him and says, or he visits her because the guy who was at the door, who everybody thought killed her, died himself. His fucking head was smashed in. Yeah. Horrifically murdered. And he had a fake eye, so he brings her the eye. Yes, he brings her the eye and being like, I know you said you wanted this. And she's like, yeah, I wanted to see like his last thoughts before he died. And so she reads it, and then basically after reading the eye, she shows up at his house with his new girlfriend and says, and basically she's like, she just inflicts herself upon them. It's very funny. It's played for laughs where she just shows up and they're like, oh, we're busy. And she's like, that's okay.
With a giant box. Yeah.
With a giant fucking box. Yeah.
Yeah.
With what is revealed to be a giant wooden man who is horrifying looking.
Oh my God.
A statue. This director is so good. Or shout out to whoever's designing his props. He's so good at making inanimate objects terrifying.
It's a golem. Like it's a Jewish
idea.
Spoiler.
Yeah, that it's a golem, right?
I'm not sure if that's the spoiler, but there is a part of it that I feel like you would think is more of a. I feel like maybe it's a spoiler to think it's a golem, but then there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. The thing that I called early on was that who actually killed his wife. It was him. Spoilers, it was him.
Well,
because,
yeah, kind of.
I mean, he had it done. The moment she got murdered, I was like, oh, it's him. Because they first show him with his back turned the whole time in this really like, and his office is very menacing. And I'm like, he's bad. Right?
I thought it was Ben Whishaw. That was the big spoiler for me. That it was not Ben Whishaw.
Who's Ben Whishaw?
Paddington. He's oh God, who else is he? He's he's a guy in all the movies. He's in The Lobster.
Who is he in this?
He's not in this. I just thought that was who the husband was.
Oh, I see.
You notice their names. It's like Danny and Darcy are the twins. There's the name of the husband is Olin with an. Oh no, so Olin's the name of the patient. So there's all these names. It spells out Oddity.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you're right. Because the girlfriend's Yana.
Yep.
And so it's treated like a reveal. But I don't know. I don't think they cared if you if you knew early, because basically what happens is Darcy, who's the twin, she knows. She already knows when she shows up. And she proceeds to kind of team up with the ghost of her sister to fuck with them.
Yeah, and then not before starting to die horrifically herself. Like we find out she has a brain tumor, which might have been convicted,
right?
Contributing to the psychic factor. But like we find out very quickly that she still, for all her like prescience, doesn't realize there's like a trap door, like just right at her feet when she's
that's
accusing
at
this.
The end, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, but we find out all this stuff about her.
Well,
but
okay,
yeah.
I have a theory about that actually.
Yeah.
Because I think she does. No.
You think so?
Yeah, because there's a line. So we're skipping around, and I guess we don't have to explain the movie beat for beat to people because they should see it. Mm-hmm. But at the end, she basically is crying, and he comes home because for most of the movie he's not home, and there is a cat, and he is bothering me, folks. Rue.
Yes? Oh yeah, Rue.
Oh, sorry, Rue. No, Rue. Rue, look at me. Sorry, everybody. I'm not cutting this.
I'll go on with the plot.
So at the end, she's crying and she calls him because most of the movie is his girl. So what happens is she shows up. She insists on staying. He's like, I got to go to work. I work nights. His girlfriend's like, yeah, I'm going into the city. His girlfriend can't find her keys. So basically she's left alone with this twin and this golem who's terrifying, and they're both at the table, and the twin is being terrifying.
Yeah, she's like, I know you were fucking my husband before, I'm sorry, my sister's husband. She's like, yeah, I know things. She's like, there's this great exchange where she's like, do I look stupid? And she's like, I'm blind. She's like, you sound stupid.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, no, because she says, do I look stupid? She says, like, would you answer the door for a strange man? And she goes, no, do I look stupid? And she goes, I don't know. You sound stupid. And then she goes, and then she's like,
she's like, you're playing
she's like, my sister wasn't stupid. Yeah, my sister didn't look stupid, is basically what she's saying. And she's saying in the end, like, my sister didn't open that door for a strange man. Therefore, she wasn't killed by him. But what we learn is that she knows this whole time. Mm-hmm. And so, like, what happens is the husband at the end shows up, and she's crying to him, and she says, like, I know this other guy killed him, the orderly
this guy you work with, yeah.
Ivan. And she's like, I know because you told him to kill her.
Well, she knows because she could see the guy's head. The guy who was in the mental asylum who came to warn the sister, he overheard the plot. Very funny.
We're making this sound way more convoluted than it is, which is funny.
Yeah.
But going to my theory that she knows about the trapdoor, she says, I killed the wrong man. Because the reveal is that the person who killed the guy, Olin, who was originally revealed, was her golem.
Yes.
And she says, I killed the wrong man, and I'll pay for that. And I think that's why she knows what's going to happen to her. I think she knows that she has to be punished, and the trapdoor thing is her accepting her fate.
I mean, it just seems like she's cutting it really close because she falls before Ivan comes back to the house on the husband's orders to finish her off. And so by the time he gets to the house, she's already dying, and she's trying to do one of those like OA 5 movement things to get the golem. We forgot the part where the girlfriend tries to go and like she realizes there's something in the head of the monster.
I want to talk more about other scenes, but I get what you were saying, which is like, how could she? It's like Ocean's 11. How could she plan for all this? I just got the vibe because she's sort of like lightly a witch. She says like, this was given to my family, and it feels like they're like a family of witches.
Oh,
like,
yeah, possibly. That's probably why she was in the house doing all that weird shit to begin with, the sister.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the plot is basically you fucked with the wrong witch family.
Yeah.
And
you're right. Yeah.
It's all to say that my interpretation is that everything we saw was kind of her intent to some extent. Like maybe she was jazzing along the way, but I think she sort of knew that she has a tumor, right? So it's like she knew, like, I'm going to die here. I'm going to die here tonight, and I'm going to take these fuckers out with me.
Yes. Well, to your point, there's like a reception element too. They don't get reception in the house, and it feels like there's only a certain point where she can even get reception to her sister beyond the grave.
Yeah.
Like, so she has to stay in this kind of corner of the room where they also get cell phone reception. And the last thing her sister said to her over voicemail was something like, what is it, like, I connect with you, or we're connected, something like that.
Something like that.
Something very, like, weird and, like, out of place when she says it. It's like, we're connected is what she says when she gets her on the voicemail.
Yeah.
And then, so that's what she's saying at the end is, like, we're connected, and only at that moment can she, like, activate the golem, which is in the that right area, but that's also when the phone rings, and there's no one else in the house, so, like, she meant to kill the guy who killed her sister. So when that guy shows up, he doesn't kill him. She can't.
Well, I think her arc is that she doesn't. Not that she can't, that she doesn't.
Oh, you think that she chose not to kill what's his name? Io?
Maybe
no.
I'm reading
Ted?
too much into all of this, but I think in the end she takes mercy.
But interesting.
Because what she kind of does in the end is she lets these people hang themselves. She gives them she gives him the bellhop
Oh my God, that's so good.
Yeah, that was really funny. This movie is also funnier than you think.
Yeah.
Because it knows how off-putting and how horrifying the wooden man is, that it's almost played for laughs at times.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how fucking ridiculous is this wooden man? Because if you haven't seen this movie, just Google the wooden man from it, and you'll immediately be like, oh my fucking God, yeah.
You know what's actually very clever is I'm now looking at the poster behind me. You can't tell, but it flips. It's like you can read it either way, and one side is her and one side is the monster.
Because
so like it's the trapdoor. It's that element. We haven't really gotten into what is awesome about this movie, or like the potential that I think is really exciting, which is, yes, this woman ran I think she calls it Oddities, is the name of her curio shop, and it has not the same bunny from Caveat, but it has like his brother. Like the bunny from Oddity Caveat was able to sense when there were supernatural presences by banging its drum. So it would do like the girl in the movie would hold it up to different parts of the house, and if it was like haunted by the ghost of her mother, father, whatever, it would bang. So this time we see the woman, the sister, and the husband's just left. She's touched the eyeball, and she gets really upset and really worried, and she goes over to where there's a giant package. We see the walls are adorned with all these, like, Annabelle-style cursed objects. And there is a bunny that looks exactly the same, except it's holding a thing of symbols. And when she goes over to the package that she's going to bring to the husband's house, it picks up its symbol and it, like, clanks once. Yeah. So it's not the same bunny, but it's clearly in the same bunny cinematic universe. And I'm just wondering... Yeah.
I love that that's what you've identified as the awesome part of this movie.
Well, because the implication is there could be so many more bunnies.
Oh, that's true. There could be a whole line of bunnies. I love it, but that scene is basically John Wick getting his guns. Yeah. Like that, again, that's what this movie is. It's you fucked with the wrong witch. And so but what makes this movie scary, which is very important to talk about, is that for most of the movie, it's from the perspective of the people being fucked with. And like, the first person, they do a good job. Like you were talking about Caveat's efficiency and how it's like, okay, how do you get these? Every horror movie has the same problem. How do you trap a person in a place? How do you get a person to not be able to have help?
Yeah.
In this case, it's this house in the woods, a beautiful, weird, creepy house, and the first person that's basically the victim of the horror situation is this girlfriend who, as you're realizing, as I think the sister's realizing, doesn't deserve to die.
The girlfriend of the new girlfriend, yeah.
Yeah. You get this implication that, he probably cheated on his, or he definitely cheated on his wife with her, but she's sort of like, you don't know what he told her.
Yeah.
And so what happens, what's that?
So they get her out of the house. They like literally just scare her out of the house.
Exactly. What happens is the ghost basically fucks with her and then goes, and here's your car keys. Go on, get out.
Yeah.
But the sequence is so well done.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about why this movie, because just like Caveat, you've seen a lot of horror movies too, right? I assume you've seen everything.
I've seen all of them.
That's what I figured.
I've seen it all.
And are you like me in that? Are you like me in that? Like it takes a lot to scare you.
No, I'm kind of like the marijuana like person in terms of movies. Like the more horror movies I see, the more terrified I become of horror movies.
Okay.
It's like a conditioning thing. I don't know why, but I'm now more scared of going into movie theaters than I ever have been before in terms of like what it's going to do to me psychologically.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not funny, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I'm the opposite. Is I'm like the alcoholic horror user, where it takes more and more every time to work.
Maybe horror movies have also gotten scarier. There just wasn't literally the kind of thing where you can watch First Omen and you're like, oh God, that's incredible.
Yes.
Well, it has no right to be, but
What a good movie.
So good. And we have 10 of them just this summer alone, let alone the year.
One of the best years for horror, hands down. And I feel like I say that every fucking year. That's what makes it great. But this is all to say that the reason why I like Damian McCarthy is he's one of the few directors that still scares me. I have, especially with jump scares. Jump scares to me, if it's done bad, you're watching the movie and you're like, okay, well, the camera pan this way, and when it pans back, there'll be a scare, you know?
Yeah.
And there were still moments in this that I sort of knew. But then when it would happen, I would still be this moments of that's fucking incredible. Or what a good idea. He's so good at both that and tension. So
it just keeps you on the edge of your seat, whether or not it pays off. It's just I think he's playing into expectations, right? He doesn't swerve where you think oh, it's going to be when she closes the mirror, there won't be something behind her, but then it's going to come up in front of her, which is what so many of these jump scares are now. It's trying to subvert your expectation of the jump scare. He's like, no, it's just there.
It's just there. But it's something in the way he's shooting it that makes it so effective for me. The tent scene. Mm-hmm. And again, this is one where it's you sort of know what's going to happen. So when they finally show what happened to the wife,
the tent. I thought you meant tents, in
Oh
tents.
no, the tent, the actual tent scene.
Camping.
She because her family is witches, she has a camera on a timer that's taking pictures every 30 seconds. And the moment you see that device, you're like, well, I know how that's going to fucking end up.
Yeah.
The guy tells her there's someone in your house. She doesn't believe him. And then she thinks to check the camera. And so she grabs the camera, and what she has set up in her house, because they just moved in, is a yellow tent in the middle of this big room. Basically, the idea of we're camping out in our house. We haven't moved in. She gets in the tent and checks the pictures, and sure enough,
oh my God,
there's a fucking picture with someone in it, and you're like, fuck, because now she's in a tent with the zip shut, and she knows someone's in the fucking house. And we get this long sequence where she unzips the tent.
Why does she unzip? I mean, it's not going to help her, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just fucking waiting. And the way this director shoots things is he'll do these shots where it's there's several places the thing can happen.
Yep.
And you're waiting and you're wondering. And then it happens and it's it doesn't even matter that you knew it was coming, and that everybody in my theater was so vocal. My theater, there was a lot of oh, fuck. People come on, Jesus Christ.
You know what it is? It's Winky's. It's the monster behind Winky's trash can in Mulholland Drive. It is that thing where it's it's coming because he's had the dream that he's going to see something behind the dumpster, and it's what's his name? Patrick Fleischer, is that his name?
I don't know.
Fleischer. Yeah, but he goes up behind the dumpster, and sure enough, the woman who plays the nun, that actress, comes out and she's a sparkly hobo, and she just pops out from behind the dumpster, and he has a heart attack. The sound goes mute or muffled, and he just dies. But it's bright daylight out. Yeah. And real the heart, but she doesn't pop out. She kind of just wheels out, kind of slowly.
Right.
And
again, there's a sort of elegance to jump scares where you have to. And what's funny is that the jump scare in that tent moment I just described is very similar to a jump scare at the end of Sinister, a jump scare I did not like because I felt was very cheap and unearned. And so there's a certain elegance in how you set it up. And most jump scares, what a lot of horror movies don't understand is what's just as important is the tension leading up. Yeah. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a literal someone jumping out. At all
the stinger.
Times.
You don't like the sound stingers though, right? When they use the sound as I
think if you do something unique with it, I rather it be in the scene, the noise.
Diegetic.
Yeah. I think that's more a really good reference to me is the in Signs when he looks under the door and you hear the click of the claws as the hand comes out. Shit like that, where it's like, it's all about like you pace it weird, you know, you don't do quite, and that's what this guy's, I think, really good at. In fact, the tent jump scare isn't really even my favorite. The one that I saw coming, but again was effective nonetheless because I had never seen this before, is the girlfriend finds the camera and she's going through their old videos and she watches. Yeah, she watches a video of them in the tent, and she watches the video, and the sister, the dead sister's filming, and she's showing the tent, and she pans over to her then husband, and he's like freezing, and he looks miserable, and she giggles, and then the girlfriend rewatches it, and this time when she pans over, it's the dead
Sister,
wife staring right at the camera.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah, and then she looks up, and she
drops the camera. Yeah, and the flash goes off, and you can see her for just a second.
Yeah, it's so good. I mean, I also thought the one at the end with the bellhop. So we've set up this narrative idea. It's such a cute little joke. It's almost like a Catskill style humor. It's like
this
a
is
one-two.
Yeah, it's like a meta jump scare joke.
Yeah. So we hear the story in the beginning. She's telling the husband, the sister is, when he comes to visit her shop, she has a shop full of cursed items. That's what I mean about like just, yeah, you're right. The Warrens, like this can go anywhere now because those cursed items can go anywhere. And they all have different like lore behind them. So one of them she shows them is a bell like from a hotel. And she's like, oh, don't ring it. It's from a guy. He was like a nasty little bellhop. He was a bellhop his whole life. And one day he does something and he dies. And
he fell down the stairs. Yeah.
He fell down the stairs and he dies. But now the bell is cursed. And he's like, well, let me try ringing it. She goes, well, the last two people who rang it, like the woman right after him who rang it, like saw him running at her.
Right. The
and
bell.
So, like, yeah.
It's a great idea. A bell that calls a ghost bellhop, basically. Yeah.
So, but we hear that, like, specifically that she sees him, like, running at her, and then everyone else who's rang it before has died. So at the end of the movie, the guy's, like, gotten away with murder, basically, and he's yeah.
Oh, sorry. He's a skeptic, is just a very big part of it, of this revenge. Sorry, go on.
No, but I mean, like, that also plays into, like, his relationship with the orderly, who he had murdered the sisters. But at the very end, he gets a package from her, self. I guess she mailed it earlier, where it's just that bell. And it's just that tantalizing idea for him. So he's like, yeah, screw it. I burned that effigy, the golem. He burned that alive. So, like, it doesn't really matter to him. So he presses the bell, and then you're just waiting. And you're just waiting. And you're waiting for it to rush in on you. The shot's really wide, so you're just waiting for him to, like...
They keep cutting. They keep cutting back and forth, and you're like, when is it going to cut back to him? And the bellhop will be behind him. Or like, when is he going to run out of a room? He keeps cutting between all these jump scare... setup shots, right? Yeah.
I kept thinking it was going to rush him because that's the
Me
story
too.
they've set up. And so at the very end, the very last stinger shot, and I think it does come with the sound stinger, but it's just standing right next to him. Oh, it doesn't?
This is even better. Music kicks in, remember?
Oh,
The ending credits music, this like very cheer. This is what I mean that the movie is funny. It knows it's funny. So he basically keeps looking around, and then he does this moment of like, oh, well, I told you ghosts don't exist. He like sighs to himself and music kicks in. That's like old timey music. We get a few more shots, and then in the wide, the bellhop's just standing there, and then it's not a jump scare. That's the thing. You're waiting
for him to do anything. He's just there. You're just it's like almost like a still image. It's like the end of The Shining. It's really effective. I think also there's an element to this, reminds me a lot of City of Lost Children, or almost like Terry Gilliam, which is the hospital itself. It's very creepy. There's like a cannibal who we just kind of see from the back the entire time. His head is like all, kind of wrapped up. And at the end of the movie, when there is a loose end, which is the guy, the orderly who was hired to kill the sisters that didn't die because the golem spared him, he wakes up and he's tied to a hospital bed. And basically the husband's like, sorry, I'm going to have to like... cut you loose, dude. And he lets out the cannibal into the room, and all we just see is this guy's face coming up and like licking his toes, and we just see from like the POV of like the guy looking over the edge of the bed as much as he can in restraints, and this like this goblin man just starts nomming on him. It's horrifying.
Because again, like you mentioned that the bellhop bell was mailed to him ahead of time. That's like why I think like, oh, she had this all planned out, because she knew she read this guy immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
She knew like this guy's full of himself. He's a skeptic. He uses people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's that idea of like, all I have to do to destroy this guy is send him this bell. I told him don't ring the bell. Of course he's going to ring the fucking bell because he's smug and he doesn't believe in this shit.
Oh, you know what I just realized? I don't think she knows that it's him right away, because all she knows is that she needs to touch his ring. At some point she touches like their wedding ring, and that's when she knows he was behind the hit. All she knows at first is that the guy didn't kill her. Like kill her sister.
Maybe you might be right. I'm not.
She like hugs him. She's so happy to see him. She's not like I knew you killed my sister from the moment he walks in.
I disagree. I disagree because Olin overheard their conversation, so she knows that.
It's very funny.
Yeah,
it's a very funny conversation where he's like, the guy's so creepy, the orderly.
He's so creepy.
And he's, I think he's from the OA. I think he was in
He's
season
from
2
a bunch of things. He's got creep face, so.
He's like James Urbaniak on like weird facial surgery kind of thing. I don't know how to.
He's got creep face, so he's eating well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you need a creep in a movie, you're going to stick this guy in your movie. So I was looking at his credits, and he's in, like, The Witcher. He's in Dune. He's in, Part 2, Dune Part 2, yeah.
I was trying to recognize him the entire time. I was like, I think I know where this guy's from. At first I thought it was Death from Bill and Ted, because he kind of has that look.
That's
of
William
that guy.
Sadler, but yeah, I know what you mean.
So they're having this conversation, and the husband's like, look, I need you to kill my wife, make it look like just a stranger came in and killed her. And the guy's like, well, sometimes strangers sexually assault their corpses.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't do that.
And he's like, Jesus fucking Christ, man, I'm just trying to kill my wife here. Why you gotta make it weird?
And his reasoning for it is so funny, too, because he's like, why do you even need her dead? Why don't you just divorce her if you're having an affair? He goes, she loves me too much. It would break her heart.
And this
He's
is what
not
I
even
mean.
mad.
Yeah, this is what I mean, where his plots are always a little silly, because I'm like, what a silly thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I assume since she knows his memories, she knows that conversation, because Olin overhears it. Is what is revealed is that Olin showed up because he heard that he was going to do this. And like, I think the idea is that Olin didn't want to just go to this woman's house and say, your husband's trying to kill you. Mm-hmm. I think the idea is he was trying to say, like, because Olin he gets out, he's in like a halfway house, but he's still like not in a great place.
Yeah.
Mentally. So I think like he's trying to convey like you are in danger, but he does it in a way. It kind of reminds me of Barbarian, where that guy runs after her and you don't realize he's warning her.
Yeah. Yeah. But you kind of get it. Like the setup of this is very much like he's like, I think they kind of faked you out in the trailer, made it look like he was being like grabbed away or he just disappears. But really he's like, I'm going to go get help. Like that's why he's not there when she's attacked. He's like, I'm going to go to the city and like go get you help. And so he leaves and then she like decides to go look at the camera. I mean, yeah, the query here is why was she setting up this like haunted kind of spooky camera thing to begin with? It's because she's a witch. I forgot about that.
Well, when she calls her sister, she says, I'm looking for orbs. She's trying to see if the house is haunted because her sister told her like, oh, you should check for ghosts. So she's checking for ghosts.
We haven't talked at all about how the mannequin operates, which is it's really clever, both like in a metaphorical, like both in like a theological sense, I guess, or like the girlfriend finds stuff inside of the head of this monster, and it's like hair, it's like a picture of the two of them. It basically is what connects their two spirits, and it is like a very Jewish like folktale of like the golem that you can like activate to life by the connection you have with your ancestors or something like that. I think there was an X-Files like that episode.
Yes, there's several. There's a trash golem, or that's a tulpa.
That's a tulpa.
The golem episode. Yeah, no, it's really good storytelling because I knew pretty quickly, like, oh, that's a fucking golem, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Because the girlfriend, in another very well done tense scene, goes to the mannequin and like inspects it finally after it's been sitting in her house. And she tries to reach in its mouth, and the whole audience tensed up when that happened. Everybody went like, no.
No, not the mouth.
She looks in the back, and she finds 5 holes, and she takes tweezers, and she starts pulling out objects.
Oh,
and
God,
the
it's
objects
so creepy.
is hair and all these things in blood, and like, oh, okay. I see what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, suddenly the sister's like, who's been sleeping on the couch, like the blind sister goes like, put it back, and is standing up, staring straight at her.
So good.
for a blind woman, she's like only like I'm saying, she's casually aware of like what feels like
because
she's yeah.
Oh, see, I think she sensed it because in that
she
moment, because she keeps falling asleep and stuff, and I think the implication, because she like the girlfriend calls and she's like, I don't know what's going on. This woman's a weirdo. She just fell asleep. I think the idea is she is channeling things in that moment, right?
She's in a trance, yeah. That's the caveat. It's also the caveat, like, plot device, which is like, can we trust that this person is actually, like, in this moment deactivated?
Yeah.
Like, you have to kind of tiptoe around her. There's one horrifying moment
where
the woman goes to the railing. She's on the second floor. She's looking at the sister.
This fucking scare.
This scare is like one of the most, again, just effective horror scares ever, which is she's looking down. She sees the monster. It's staring straight ahead. The sister's asleep. She looks back at the monster, and it's suddenly like, I think there is a sound stinger, but it's looking right up at her.
Right up at her.
Like with his mouth agape, and it is horrifying. And that is the only time you see the monster move besides the very last kind of sequence. Yeah, and the way it moves is slow. It's not a fast, like, it's not a Danny Boyle 28 days later.
Yeah, I would argue that there's a decision the director made. And the bellhop reminded me of it too, which is that what ultimately you realize watching this movie is you're rooting for the scary things.
Yeah.
And I realized that fairly early when, like, clearly the dead sister, the ghost, was fucking with the girlfriend. And again, knowing, like, early on, like, okay, he clearly is the one who did it. But what that means that's interesting is that the first sequence with the girlfriend, a very long sequence of her with this woman getting scare after scare, because it keeps happening and it ramps up, and there's little things like she goes into a room, locks the door, has all the lights on, and then she goes downstairs to pee, and she goes into the bathroom, and the light switch is on the outside of the door.
Why is that? Yeah, it's so crazy. Yeah.
And the woman, Darcy, the sister, is asleep. The golem is sitting at the table, and the light gets turned off. And then she opens the door, and they're still sleeping. Little things like that. And, like, she walks upstairs, she looks down the hall, she sees the sister for a second, and then it ramps up to the point that she's, like, in a panic, and that's when the trunk essentially, like, makes a noise, and she looks in, and there's her car keys that she was missing. Yeah. And it's clear, again, that the sister is like, okay, now here's your car keys, get the fuck out.
She even says, get out. She's like, get out is what the sister says when they see her in the shadow. She's like, get out. And so she just does it.
Is that the last shadow where she walks out and stupidly stops before getting in her car, looks back into the open door, and the sister, like, slowly kind of comes into view. It was great.
Yeah.
It's really effective.
And not spoilers for Longlegs, you guys, but I'm hoping you guys seen Longlegs. It's kind of like the entity in Longlegs. It kind of goes in and out of view at certain points. Like it materializes and dematerializes in sort of like a smoky fashion. And it's like, that's not quite a jump scare, right? Because it's like, it's materializing or it's fading.
This is very much like, this is what I like even more than jump scares, which is images that you just don't forget. It was a moment that was like more like chill down your spine, where it's like, I don't need it to ping my nerves. I like it better when it makes me shiver and go like, oh. Yeah. And that's so much more effective. And that's one of those shots of her emerging from this darkness very gradually that you're like, fuck.
This movie's kind of, thinking about it, this movie is kind of like, it's subversive. It's a little bit more deep than it appears on the surface. And I think Longlegs kind of is the same way. And I think it kind of goes to like, the skinamarink of it all, the back rooms. It's the idea of playing with these liminal spaces or liminal ideas, which if you just told the story, we're telling you the story, it doesn't sound like too much happens, but like we're describing the ambiance of it because
vibes.
it's the entire thing is vibes. And it's like a very Gen Z, I saw the TV glow kind of thing where it's just like, this seems like more conventional, straightforward, like a haunted thing, but it is just bad vibes,
I don't think it's a new thing. Like,
no.
We could tell the story of a man who goes to a hotel that's haunted and they convince him to kill his family. And that just sounds like pretty standard. And then you watch The Shining and you're like, okay, I see. It's a return to vibes. The first Omen being a good vibes.
First Omen is a good example because like Omen isn't that scary, but it is a vibe. And then First Omen is just completely steeped in these long shots and this kind of like a
dread.
Phenomenon.
It's a feeling of dread. This I think has that, but what going back to the conjuring of it all, I think what's interesting to me it's weird to me that they didn't jump on the marketing for this, because I think this has broad appeal, because you're right. It's really good at that, but it also gives people the fucking jump scares they love. And it gives them fairly often, where I'm like, okay, well, like, this is kind of like, this could work for most like casual horror viewers. People might watch it and not quite know why it's creepier, and it's like, yeah, because the director really knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. This is more of an acquisition film. Like, it's funny that this got any release at all, because what this is like really good to build a library up and shut. Like, this is like a definition of a Shudder acquisition. They found Caveat at a film festival. They clearly made a deal with this guy to give him a limited release for his next film. But these are such microscopic indie budgets that, like,
you're right.
I don't
that
think
is
5 years
probably
ago.
what happened.
You know what this reminds me of, thinking about the Warrens of it, is like, you'd have to know Caveat to know that's exactly what they're building up here, but it is like an SCP. Like, that's, secure, contain, protect. It's like that wikia of like haunted objects and haunted beings, and they classify them by like different, So I think this is like, it's almost setting that up. Like, this is the world that we've now established. There was one haunted object in Caveat. Now we see a sister item to that haunted object in a room full of haunted objects.
Yeah, and
so
I
we can
think-
just continue. Yeah.
I'm guessing it'll all remain kind of as Easter eggs, and what I mean is like I could see him doing a movie about the bellhop. But I don't think they would call it back here. The way, like, the Conjuring universe, they're trying to like be like Marvel in this really obnoxious way.
Yeah.
Where like I think this will more be like, if you know, and if you don't, they're all kind of work on their own.
It's Lynchian. Like, I hate to use that word, but it is Lynchian. It's like the idea that, like, oh, if you notice, it's like the same kind of monster, or like a similar, they operate in the same way. It's the Inland Empire things are the same kind of tulpas from Twin Peaks The Return. They operate in like a Black Lodge kind of setting, but it's not explicitly
right, where
said.
it's all kind of connected in this weird universe way. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do. There has been other cases, right, where directors or horror movies have like spun stuff off individual little things.
I think we get really obsessed, and I specifically do, about the idea of a cinematic universe. Oh, does like Blackcoat's Daughter take place in the cinematic universe of Longlegs? It could, but it's more just like a director playing with an idea of like, this is something I'm interested in. And I think this is a little bit more explicitly like, you remember that bunny? If you saw Caveat, you remember that bunny. But a lot of people,
pretty explicit. I don't know, because so yes and no, because I would think that like directors also just like Easter eggs. You know what I mean? Like, does all the Pixar movies take place in the same universe because they use that same number Easter egg, or the Pizza Planet car? You know what I mean? Where it's like, it might just be a little nod to his previous film, but I can sort of kind of see either, and that's why I like it, again, because it's like they're not like screaming it at you.
Well, it's like, reminds me of actually how like immersive unfiction works, and like the stuff that is like combined collaborative unfiction on the internet, which is like, you can find any different trailhead. This might be the first movie you see before Caveat. This could be the other one, but either way, once you see the other movie, or like the Endless and Resolution, the first two Benson and Moorhead movies, or the two that are separated. But like, as soon as you see the guys in the log cabin, you're like, oh God, is this related to that other film like that I saw a long time ago? It doesn't matter which one you saw first. The point is you found the trailhead, and now you realize it's part of a larger, story.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt your enjoyment of the film to not know that it's part of this larger narrative, or like part of the shared cinematic universe.
I like
which is
it.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I like it when it's centered around a single director and not a studio. Like Sam Raimi puts the same Evil Dead car and everything, where it's saying like, yeah, this is my universe. Like, I have a singular style
Bruce
that I'm
Campbell.
that I'm going to carry. And like, what I love about Sam Raimi is that transcends Marvel's universe, where he's like, oh, I'm doing a Marvel movie. Well, guess what? My buddy Bruce Campbell has to be in it. Like it still need to have those things.
Yeah. They put the bunny in the marketing, and it took me a while to realize it wasn't the same bunny. Like, that it looks the same, but it's
Very
holding a different...
similar looking, yeah.
Which implies, I don't know, to me, like, I'm like, my brain is like, okay, so they can have like an accordion accordion bunny, and I think that's it. I don't think you can have like any other instruments that like are played by like just a wind-up toy kind of like element. So I'm like, okay, so then they're done with the bunnies. Now what do they move on to next? But like, that's almost like the cheap part of me that wants to see this franchised and like made into a bunch of different things.
See, what I mostly really, the biggest strength that I want to keep seeing, or maybe not, maybe it'll be done to death, but I really like his ability again to make inanimate objects fucking terrifying.
Yeah. Oh my God.
It's so. It's both of these movies, the bunny and the fucking Gollum, and they're not. Mind the way, they're not subtly terrifying. This is what's really funny.
Yeah.
I guess. All right. Sorry, I'm like trying to explore something about myself because I keep thinking, why is this working and like Conjuring isn't? For example, like Annabelle, the doll Annabelle is based off of Raggedy Ann. And when you see the Raggedy Ann, you're like, oh, that just looks like a doll. It would be really cool then if a movie made me scared of just a regular doll, right? But they designed Annabelle to look sinister. And you look at Annabelle and you go like, well, of course it's scary. You made it look less scary. And it's so ridiculous that I'm not scared of it. Does that make sense? Like the Annabelle doll, I don't find scary because it's like, ooh, look, it's like a juggalo. It's like, look how scary I am. And I'm like, no, you're not scary at all. You did a bad job. This director is also doing that. This Gollum isn't subtly scary. It's overtly scary. It's in your face scary. So why does this work and Annabelle doesn't for me? And I think it might come down to talent where I'm less like, they did Annabelle, it looked bad. This looks good.
I mean, I keep looking at mine because I have the Skinamarink phone, and it is just a Fisher Price.
Yeah,
it's just like a happy look. Yeah, the Fisher Price looking phone. It's pretty happy looking. It's just that moment that it changes. This is different. This is like an object that if you found in your parents' house, you'd be like, why the fuck did they ever make dolls that look like this? But at the same time, you can totally believe that there are dolls that look like this.
I think because in this, it's played for laughs of like, it is supposed to be a cursed object, right? It's not supposed to be a child's doll. It is a very, this is a witch's cursed Gollum. And
the Gollum, yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
in Caveat, I think what Caveat works is that it's worn over time. And so what they do is that it's like, you can imagine at one point it was just a nice fluffy bunny, and then it got so worn that the eyes got bulgy and weird. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's also like the class of evil that it is. Like the bunnies are, what they call it, an SCP. It would be like a Euclid. It would be like the safest one because all it's doing is alerting you to a psychic presence. Yeah. Whereas the Golem's like a Keter class. Not to get nerdy, but it's like a Keter class. Like that Golem is meant to kill people. Like that's a cursed object, whereas the bunnies are more like informing you of whether there's supernatural presences around you. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah, the bunnies are definitely part of a play set, right? Of like a band.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, there's like at least one more bunny that I think you can do. You can't do woodwinds.
You'll probably have one. But I think I've solved my own problem though, is why the bunny works for me and like Annabelle doesn't. Because Annabelle never looked to me not creepy. It's like someone made it to look creepy. Whereas the bunny, you can imagine like there's certain elements of the bunny where it's like, it's like a weird angle and it's worn from time and it didn't always look this creepy.
Yes, I think that's it. Also, they don't do too much to like, I don't think we're ever going to get like a bunny origins. You know, like I don't think we're ever going to need to know like if there's a cursed, little girl inside the bunny. And the more you explain something, the less scary it is.
Scary it gets. Yeah, I mean, I think the issue with the Conjuring universe, which is like, there's some talent behind it for sure, but it's the studio side where they're like, we're going to be the next Marvel. We're going to be horror movie Marvel. And it's like that you can't do that. That's how horror dies, is over-explaining things.
And especially when they try to do their version of Civil War with the cursed objects, like
Annabelle versus...
Yeah, it's like all the different things that were in there.
The crooked man or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, the one that took place inside their home, that was like the fourth one, where it's like, this thing is cursed, this thing's cursed, this thing's cursed, but then it's used in such unimaginative ways. You're like, it's cursed in the sense that like spooky hands will come up and grab you if you play with it, and it's like, that's not thing, scary. Yeah.
Like, that's another conversation about why I think pop horror tends to fail, is when it's like, if it ends in a CGI battle, like a superhero type battle, you've done a bad job. You fucked up your horror movie. And I think about the ending of Conjuring 2, ending of Winchester, where ending of The Haunting, when it's like, we're not a superhero movie anymore. What the fuck? And it's just this ball numbing like CGI sequence where you're like, what the fuck is happening here?
On the other end of that spectrum is Mike Flanagan, though, because like Haunting of Hill House is so scary on rewatches because you realize there's been ghosts hiding out in the background the entire show. Longlegs is terrifying when you watch it on rewatch because you realize there's been stuff happening that's like subliminal or like barely under like your field of view. Like the pictures keep changing sizes. It's fucking wild. Like you would never catch it.
And CGI isn't a bad thing. Like Mike Flanagan uses CGI plenty. And this, like, that's the one thing in this where the wooden man, when he walks around, this was what I was getting at. We're so skipping around our thoughts, but like the first part when it's fucking with the girlfriend, we're on the wrong side of it. We're getting scared. But then once the golem comes alive, I think the idea is like, you're on the side of the ghost. So it ends up why the bellhop is a comedy beat, I think, because it's just like, we don't want to scare you anymore. You're on the right side of things.
It'd be wrong if this guy wasn't punished, right? Like if this guy just got away with it and that's the ending.
But we, the audience, don't need to be punished with him.
Yes.
So we're not scaring you, the audience, anymore. Like you are, now that you know that these people are being fucked with for a reason. And the golem is sort of that in between where, like, I didn't find the golem getting up and moving, which is clearly a guy in a suit. I was like, I wish it was one of those situations like the hedge,
Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah, or the hedge animals in The Shining, where it never it just keeps getting closer, but you never see it move.
I would like to have seen a Jacob's Ladder kind of thing where it's like maybe I know that sounds so antithetical to what we've talked about, but like some of that jerky cam kind of stuff where like they cuts out frames, so it's just like jerking kind of closer. Like the movements are a little bit more supernatural. But
because
again, he's working on that.
Up until that point, what made the column scary was that it kept moving when you weren't looking at it.
Yeah, or the implication of it moving. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it would have just been creepier if it just started ramping that up more and more, you know?
Yeah, maybe if you never saw it but just heard its like legs thump, like if you just heard like the sound cues in this are very, very strong. They're not like smile level like stingers, but like the sound cues are like your ears are pricked for like anything that sounds out of the ordinary, because that's the first thing the sister hears when she's in the house alone is like a thump from the other room. The clues are in that maybe maybe there is somebody in the house. And so there's this element too of like, I think there's a lot that your brain can play on you. There's a lot of tricks your brain can play on you. That's the point of Skinamarink. I think that's the point of like this upcoming Backrooms thing. It's like you're just looking for something and you're listening for something that may or may not be there. But like when a sound does come, it's really, really effective. So I think you could have not shown the monster moving at all and just had the guy like, imply that he might have psyched himself out and the sounds might have psyched himself out. And it just, this woman was dying in the room right next to him. So
yeah.
I really do love this. And one thing we haven't mentioned is we're talking so much about the bunny, but like it's only in there for a hot second. It's like literally a second of screen time. Do you see the bunny?
Yeah, it's an Easter egg,
Yeah.
Like, I think so.
I like that I like the implication there that you can just enjoy this movie at face value. You don't need to know about the bunny, but if you do know, cool. Then you know.
I like it as a reference for sure. Mm-hmm. And like, sorry, I was just looking at cast. There's a guy from Caveat in this.
Really? Was that the guy, the crazy guy?
I don't know. Let me look at this. His name, it was Barnett, Declan Barnett. Played by the actor is named Johnny French, which seems like something your friends from Boston would call you if you like ate a baguette. You know what I mean? Like, check out Johnny French over there.
It is the main guy. Okay, so it's the guy that I think maybe he plays the cannibal. Is that what it is? Possibly.
I bet that's it. Yeah, that's a good cameo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I kind of assumed there would be a Caveat person in there somewhere. I thought at first it was Odin, like the guy who comes to the door. I assumed it was like that kind of shared universe where maybe this is the extension of his story, but I don't think that's the case. No. I don't think this is the same guy.
No. I think you're overthinking it. I assume the director at this point, like I'm not.
All the characters' names spell out Oddity, Dave. I don't think I'm necessarly overthinking it.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think he isn't doing something here.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's what you said. If you know it, you know it. If you don't, it's going to work on its own. I think it's going to be that level of like these, like, it's not necessarily the same universe, but it is a lot of the same themes and a lot of the same, like,
oh, absolutely,
actors and props and stuff. And like,
and I think,
nods.
I think that the devices of it, like literally the MacGuffins, the plot, I guess they're not MacGuffins, but like the haunted objects, the way that people act in these movies are themselves kind of haunted objects. Like I said, like you were talking about, the girls just fall into trances, people just stop moving, and you're just like, okay, half the tension here is just going to be like, are they going to wake up? Is someone going to wake up?
It's so hard to fully describe because I agree, like, this movie is so close to like a horror movie you would normally see, but there's just a slight way to them that is like unique to this director. And there's like, I don't know. I can't wait to watch this again so I can think about it more. But like, it's weird. Again, it's all very weird, and it doesn't quite feel like this was a movie where I kept going like, wait, when is this taking place? And then I remember, oh, they have cell phones, where it's like it doesn't quite. It's timeless the way and I know a lot of directors did this. Like It Follows is also supposed to be timeless. And I really like
out
that.
Of time, like anachronistic, like you don't know where it is. Yeah,
and I think that's a really cool thing to do for a horror movie. I think it ensures that it doesn't. I was going to say it doesn't go stale, but I don't think that's a problem here. But it adds to like that general vibe of everything feels a little off at all times.
Well, it's again like I saw the TV glow. We're all going to the World's Fair, but without like it is just so much of online horror, like the online horror community, like that kind of vibe is like you watch the guy who made Skinamarink YouTube channel. It's literally called Bite Size Nightmares, and it's just him interpreting people's dreams as like sonic and visual landscapes. It's the idea of liminal space. You go on Instagram, you find one of those long Furbies, and you're like, oh fuck, I'm out of here. But I think that stuff is like effective because you're letting your imagination do it. Just let your imagination do like a lot of this work. All you need is the prompt.
Did you notice? Did you actually notice? This director was very good at geography. Yeah. And what? The reason I noticed that is all the exteriors of this house. It kind of reminds me of The Shining. The exterior, the house is gigantic. It is so the house is a giant square, and you park in the center of the square. You drive through the house. It's like a moat around a parking lot, if that makes sense. And so, or rather a wall. It's a giant like a wall, gate around nothing. And when you go in the house, though, it is small. It is just one loft area. You only really see one side of these 4 sides of this house, right? The rest is apparently not there, and they never address it. And so but you feel this geography of like, okay, you go downstairs, you walk in the front door, there's a table, there's a little living area, you go up the stairs and around, there's a loft looking over that area. One side goes to the trap door, the other side goes to the bedroom. And that's it. That's all there is. But you get really used to it, you start living in it, and it stops occurring to you that this house is way bigger on the outside.
Yep, or that there's like that there's the room for the trapdoor, like you just get like this sense of like lost geography, even though it's so small, or it seems so small from the inside that you just are getting lost. Like, why is there a outside like light switch? There's something that seems to be wrong with the space, almost like House of Leaves. And it's like the inverse of House of Leaves, yeah,
they play with it. You mentioned the golem looking up. Like when you're up on the loft, you can see stuff down below that is creepy. Like there's so many little opportunities for you to be constantly kind of looking over your shoulder and looking at the shots, being like, looking for things, wondering what's
effective.
gonna,
I mean, I don't know if this does as much as the other, like as much as Haunting of Hill House or as much as Longlegs in terms of hiding stuff from you, because your eyes are constantly scanning and they want you to know when things are scary.
I don't even think they have to. I think it's about like Longlegs, for example. There's also just shots in that where it's framed in a way where you're like, you feel tense because you feel like something's there. And this does that too, to an extent where you always kind of feel this overall sense of dread throughout.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think that, Longlegs, not to keep going back, Longlegs is a puzzle. There usually is, the reason you feel that way is because there is stuff hiding in almost every shot. There's like, or subliminal sound cues in almost every shot. And that like, if you follow the trailheads, you'll be able to find what those clues were or what the exact image was that you were looking for. Whereas this movie is just way more explicit and way more vibes. It's like when you know that there's going to be something scary, you'll see it. There's nothing that you're going to on rewatch catch,
Again, like he's not making, he is and he isn't. He's not making movies that are trying to be so pretentious or so art house that they aren't viable to main audiences. And that's why, again, I'm like, I think you're right, which is like he has a deal. This is a good. They've got a system where it's like people will find this on Shudder and they'll watch it at home, and you don't have to see this in theaters. But I kind of feel like I'm like, man, I wish they'd jumped on this guy, because I think the reason I think you could sell this shit to mainstream audiences, and I think they would enjoy the shit out of it, and they don't have to discover it. You know what I mean?
This kind of reminds me of, like, okay, so where my boyfriend lives in Tulare in upstate California, or not upstate, in like Northern California, more northern, they have a Wimpy's. And a Wimpy's is like a fast food chain based on the Popeyes character. But it's not like really a chain. They haven't franchised it that much. It's just like a one or two Wimpy's in this one town. And it's really good, like burgers and shakes and fries. And you kind of want to be like, why aren't you guys making more Wimpy's? Like, put Wimpy's everywhere.
You think the answer is them like, we would if we could, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that is the case here.
Yeah.
You know, like, but for example, I'm just like, I don't know, Neon advertised the shit out of Longlegs. I don't feel like that required much of a budget. Yes, Nicolas Cage is a selling point, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. And I do hope that they don't all horror don't try to be Longlegs, you know what I mean?
The budget was very cute, though. They spent it all on like a viral like marketing that you have to like. It's clues, like it's like Cloverfield. You had to find a website.
Yeah, I don't want everybody to do what Longlegs did, because Longlegs did it for a specific reason. But I'm just like, I don't know, Oddity. This just feels like I barely saw it. I barely saw trailers for it, and I just think they could have done more. But
I think it's like Shudder's thing, though. Like, Shudder might not want people to go to that many theaters for it, because the point is that you see it on Shudder and you're going to see those two images of the bunnies. Like, that's going to be their two screen grabs, right? It's going to be like, you're going to find it in their library. It's more about like the feeling of discovery. Like, and that maybe feeling of like,
and maybe they'll push it up on their front page.
Oh, absolutely,
and they'll have their own way of doing it. Yeah. They won't be like Netflix and bury their new things. Yeah. Yeah,
like, because right now we're like, you're right. Things are getting associated with horror with certain studios. Neon, A24. Like, we associate a certain aesthetic with what they're producing. Whereas Shudder is acquiring. They're just acquiring different titles and seeing what sticks. And this is one of the first one I think that they was in A Violent Nature. Something else that they've released. If they're going to release something, it has to be in conjunction with another studio, because they don't have any theaters, you know. So I just think it's very clever what they're doing. They're basically marketing it for a audience that's going to discover it via their streaming platform, kind of like, you know, Netflix having to put up Roma in theaters or The Irishman or something. It's like, yeah, but this was acquired for a streaming audience.
Yeah, that's true. Like, it is like a different strategy. Like, Netflix did that because they wanted to win awards, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually wondering why they even released Shudder, like why they released this one in theaters. Because again, you're right. It was very little marketing, and
I think I know why.
Why?
Because this gets them the buzz, right? So you release it in theaters, you get reviews, you get people like us doing podcasts about it, and then you put it on Shudder a little in a few months, a little closer to Halloween. You do it before Halloween. You don't want to do it on Halloween. I think that's why they're doing it. I agree with you. I think it's very smart. I think you put it on the theaters, you get that buzz going of like, oh, did you see Oddity?
Did you see Longlegs? And people go, here's another movie. If you like Longlegs, here's like 4 other movies that are scary that come out around the same time. Cuckoo. Yeah. You know, it actually is, that works for me. Like, you know, people want to do the deeper cuts after they say, oh, you like Longlegs? You want to know a better version of, you know, exactly what I played into. You want to know like a better version or something similar? You make those listicles. Like, yeah, they've released this very close to the big tentpole summer horror for a reason. I think you're right. And
that's why I'm glad we covered it, because, you know, we covered it on movies that deserve more hype, on Hypecast, and like I'm sure people listening, like I have a feeling a lot of people might wait to listen to this podcast because it's like it was barely in theaters. It's already pretty much gone. And I hope people at least give it a shot on streaming as soon as it comes out. Probably beginning of September, I'm guessing, you know.
Yeah, I hope I'm right. This was a Shudder acquisition, because I'm looking through their list now. Their upcoming things are like Arcadian, that Nick Cage movie.
Well, IFC Films is the distributor I'm seeing.
Yes, but I believe it was bought by Shudder. For some reason, I think that's what he told me.
It is coming out on Shudder. Yeah, okay. I'm reading a thing here. So
it's co-production, I guess.
Yeah, I'm sure they have some sort of fucking deal there where.
Yeah, but it's not like one of their. It's not one of their initial. Like, it's not something that they produced. It's something they acquired. So like they're producing like Baghead, that upcoming movie about a guy who puts bags over children.
The Bagman.
Yeah, the Bagman.
He's a man who bags. We just covered that trailer.
Yeah. That looks something, but like like Cuckoo's coming out. Like AMC owns IFC, or sorry, owns Shudder. There's IFC. There's all these different ways that I'm not gonna pretend like I know that much about. But like,
yeah, but there's synergy happening here.
There's synergy and it's smart. It is something that I think that like when we start talking about elevated horror, they want to be part of the conversation, and good for them. Like good for them for owning this little network. Like they could own this little slice of the pie of A24 and Neon have carved out for themselves. Shudder as a streaming distributor could be like the Netflix of the competition. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm loving Shudder. Yeah. Anything else to say about Oddity? I just want to say like to me every end of the spectrum of horror fandom, you'll probably enjoy this. To some extent, I've talked to people who didn't like it as much as me, but I personally really, really enjoyed it.
I think that if you like a certain kind of horror movie, I would say like it gave me the same feeling The Witch gave me when I saw it in theaters, which is like there's no real surprises in terms of like the real horror element, that feeling of just horror, but like it's efficient and it's effective and it's really good. And the reason we're talking about it at such length is because it's like a return to form. This is a classic horror film. There's no elevated sense of this film. It is just a really good horror film.
Oh yeah, there's no like deeper meaning, or if there is, it's not shouting itself at you.
It's not trauma porn. It's not like it's not Ari Aster. It's not trying to like do something else behind the scenes. It is just an effective.
It's haunted house.
Movie.
It's here's some jump scares. Here's some spooky images. Here's some ghosts. It's what Mike Flanagan often does. Although Mike Flanagan, what I love about Mike Flanagan is like he elevates his horror by having a human emotional story. Yeah. As opposed to being like, see what it's really about is this, which I like elevated horror too. Don't get me wrong, but it's like refreshing, almost to see stuff like this where it's like this is just a fucking horror movie,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is a long conversation about, like, I think elevated horror, people don't mean elevated, they mean deep. They mean deep horror. They mean horror that has an emotional component, not horror that is necessarily theoretical or, like hard to think about.
Something.
Yeah, it's just about, like, the trauma that comes in with those characters, just, like, regardless of whether or not there's a supernatural element. It's just, like, they have to come in super traumatized, and you're supposed to feel this, like, oh, God, poor them. That's, like, what elevated means in a lot of these contexts. It's, like, deep horror. Right. So I really like this movie. I think they should have given Monkey Shine, the upcoming Stephen King film, given it to this guy.
Fuck yeah!
Instead, they're giving it to Oz Perkins, which I love. I mean, great.
I'm not going to say no to that, but yeah.
It should have been this guy. It should have been, yeah.
That would have been a good choice. Holy shit! I get why they gave it to Oz Perkins because this director isn't quite on the map yet. I don't think. Like this director is getting more and more known. I guess that's why I'm frustrated because I'm like, come on, this person needs to be bigger. For exactly that reason, which is like that's a perfect pairing.
Yeah, I think that like he's just so good at objects. He makes things look scary.
Good.
They should be using him in Hollywood for a bunch of things. But like as an Irish director who's just trying to make micro budget entities, I'm not even sure how much he's willing to compromise with the Hollywood system. It kind of feels like he's just like, no, I'm good.
He's just doing his own thing, and that's fine too. Listen, as long as he keeps making movies or enjoys making movies, I'll enjoy watching them.
Yeah. All I'll say is please get back on Twitter because I cannot find our conversations and I feel like he told me a lot of stuff.
You don't have to get back on Twitter.
No, don't get back on Twitter, but hit me up on Instagram, dude.
There you go.
There we go.
Drew, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for being here and letting me do like a name drop at the beginning and end of this. That's
sure,
cool.
Fuck it. Speaking of name drops, do you want to name drop what you've been up to?
Yeah. So, guys, go back over to Passion Fruit with the dot between the U and I. Also, check out our YouTube channel. We have this great series called Reactorverse where we interview people who make content about content. And it's really interesting to hear a lot of like the issues that they've been dealing with in terms of DMCA and just struggle for monetization. YouTube is a fucker. So, like, we're really just trying to bring issues to light. So, check me out at Video Drew across all social media. That's Video Drew, one word. Spelled like it sounds. Hey, that's your guys' thing.
Hey, it is. So we got our things. We have a Patreon. Patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We have exclusive podcasts on there. We also watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. I wonder if... we usually watch movies we could... Good. So the thing is, we usually watch movies we can talk over. So I'm like, which means we don't watch we did watch The Witch recently. Like we'll watch really good movies if they've been around a while, Point is patreon.com gamefully unemployed. Check that out. That's the main point. You can also go to gamefullyunemployed.com for access to our store, which is has a lot of shit. You don't have to even be fans of us. If you're like a fan of the X-Files or Batman, there's some shit on there that you'll love. So check that out.
Did you see the Easter egg of Fox Mulder as a maniac just hiding in my little corner?
Oh, what do you got over there? A poster?
I got the Starlene Klein poster of Fox Mulder looking at the Pepe Silva board.
Oh, so, yeah. That's a good one. We also have Fluke Man in court. I love that one. What's up? What's going on? Oh, yeah, it's the end of the episode. That's what happens next.
Yeah, guys, go see this movie. It's really good. Or I guess stay at home and watch this movie. Go get Shudder. Go pay for Shudder.
Pay for Shudder, folks. Come on, you cheap fucks. Hey, listen, our music is produced by Chris Corlew. You can find him on twitter.com as the Corlew, or go to shipwreckedsailor.bandcamp.com. Our channel artwork is produced by Michael Vincent Bramley. For more of his work, go to mvbramley.art. Our episode artwork is by Justin Brown, available on Twitter as Justin T. Brown or at artnessbyjustinbrown.com. And finally, additional artwork is by Starlene Hodge. You can find her work at starlenearts.com or on Twitter as StarleneX. Cool. Goodbye.